Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Ice the Kicker podcast. My name is Glen and alongside, as always, Matt Ferrara. Week 8 is done in the NFL. A lot of teams, that was their 8th game, which means half of their season is over. So now as we enter into November and December, this is when the playoff push begins. Some teams like the Dolphins are pushing for the playoffs, and some teams like my Giants are not. And we're going to start with my Giants. Who lost another tough one on Monday Night Football against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 25-23. This was a game where the Giants looked good in the first half, getting out to a 14-3 lead. And then in the second half, as you can see over Matt's shoulder, Daniel Jones throws, his typical just really bad interceptions that just can't happen. And we'll get into Daniel Jones specifically in a second. But overall thoughts on this Giants game, and I guess I'll start out as the resident Giants fan on this podcast. This team defensively yesterday was really good, and I think they've been playing well defensively the entire season. But as we've alluded to on previous episodes, they just not ready to win games yet. They had that 14-3 lead. They were pressuring Brady. They were playing good defense. Bradbury played fantastic, broke up a couple of deep passes. But at the end of the day, Tom Brady's going to do what Tom Brady does. He gets the touchdown to Gronk. He drives the team down the field. He gets another touchdown to get the go-ahead score. But overall, the Giants' defense played really good. On the other side, the offensive line, which has been a bugaboo for the Giants for the last decade, played relatively well. That's a young offensive line, and they really stepped up in this game against the Buccaneers. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how well the defense plays or the line plays, because when your quarterback has a bad game and makes bad mistakes and throws interceptions and overthrows open receivers or doesn't even see open receivers, that's going to cost you the game. And that's exactly what happened in this game when Daniel Jones probably had one of his worst games of the season. He did drive down at the end and had that touchdown pass to Golden Tate to bring it within 2. But then, it was a poor throw and bad timing on the 2-point conversion to tie the game. So it's like 1 step forward, 2 steps back. He has a good drive. Next drive, he throws an interception. He's driving down the field, interception. So at some point, Daniel Jones needs to stop making these turnovers. There was a graphic on ESPN yesterday comparing Jones's turnovers to those of Ryan Leaf. Now, if you know anything about Ryan Leaf, he was, picked behind Peyton Manning in the 98 draft, and his career completely flamed out. Now, I'm not saying that Daniel Jones is Ryan Leaf, but at some point, this is game 20 now, we're getting close to the end of his second year, and you haven't seen much improvement over year 1 to year 2. In fact, you've seen him take steps back. So at some point, you got to be like, is this the guy to lead the Giants into the next era of football?
Yeah, the game as a whole, and again, I've been really big on the Giants defense. I think they're really, really good. They're getting the pass rush, which they haven't really had too often. They're stopping the run for the most part. I mean, they held the Buccaneers to only 81 rushing yards, and then Tom Brady 263 passing yards. Like, I think you'll take that any day of the week. Bradbury's been, I think, huge for them, so that's awesome to see that one of their big marquee signings is kind of panning out a little bit. I thought the offensive line, same thing. Like, they played well. You had Lemieux, like the 3rd or 4th rounder from out of Oregon, got, I think, his first start. That was pretty big for them. Blake Martinez continues to be a menace. Anytime the ball is completed, he's always right there for the tackle. So it's cool to see those things, but we'll dive into kind of the Giants' defense a little more after. But offensively, yeah, Daniel Jones just like he throws one dime, and then it's just like another shit pass. Like I don't know how Giants fans are gonna survive, which is this wishy-washy kind of type of play, because he's just doing things that just make no sense, and it's just like just hey, throw the ball out of bounds or stuff like that. The whole game, from an offensive standpoint, really showed that the Buccaneers were so close to so many interceptions. And I texted one of my friends. I'm like, there's going to be a pick 6 in this game. I was like, you just see so many completions that the Giants had were just barely not intercepted. And they were really eyeing on every route, and they were kind of sitting on a little bit. So it was pretty close. Like, the game could have been a lot worse. But obviously then Daniel Jones drives down at the end, and it kind of gives Giants fans some hope for his future. And then he screws up the last play. Whether it was a pass interference or not, that I still think it wasn't. But you got to throw that ball out earlier. It just 100% has to be thrown out earlier. So again, another sour taste in people's mouth, and you could almost put this game on Daniel Jones solely, I would think.
Yeah, and the thing about that 2-point conversion, the color commentator said this as the play was happening, and he was absolutely right. Not only was it out late, but it was also on the inside instead of the outside towards the pylon, and it gave the defender a chance to break up the play. I also agree that it wasn't a pass interference. I think the ball and the defender came at the exact same time. And in a situation like that with the game on the line, I think that's a good no call by the referee not to put the game in his own hands and let the players figure it out. But Daniel Jones, man, like these turnovers are just killer. And not even just the turnovers, like he's very inaccurate at times as well. Like even when he's not turning the ball over, he's missing Darius Slayton and Sterling Shepard down the sideline for big touchdown passes because they're 4 or 5 yards beyond the receiver down the field, and Jones overthrows them. It's good that the Giants, or it's good that Daniel Jones can make plays with his legs. There was a couple fourth down situations in the final drive that he converted because he was able to scramble and avoid pressure. But at some point, you have to stop turning the ball over as much as he does. There's nothing more to it than he needs to not turn the ball over. And what I've been thinking about and what I've been listening to on like the Fan this morning was he has 8 games to figure it out because, you know, if the Giants get one of those first 2 picks, there's 2 really good quarterbacks waiting to get drafted. So Daniel Jones has 8 games to improve on the turnover. I'm not saying turn into Aaron Rodgers in 8 games, but just show a little bit more, you know, potential in keeping control and keeping the ball from ending up in the other team's hands. I mean, it's ridiculous at this point that you almost sort of expect the Daniel Jones interception to have. Like when the Giants are driving down the field and looking good, you're like, okay, when's it going to happen? Is it going to happen on this play or the next play? So Daniel Jones, like I know like the consensus is give a quarterback 3 years, but when you have a couple really great quarterbacks coming out in the draft, it's not 3 years. This is the 8 more games because by the time this season's over, he's going to start 28 career NFL games. That's enough to gauge, in my opinion, who he is as a quarterback. Is he a guy that has potential but just can't keep control of the ball, and that's going to keep him from being a starting quarterback in this league? Or is he going to figure it out and be a serviceable guy that, you know, like Eli Manning, can go on a couple runs in January and win a couple of Super Bowls? So Daniel Jones needs to like step up now because he can't wait for next year because next year might not come.
Yeah, it just you watch his play and it's just like he obviously has the ability to be great. I think any quarterback who is a starter in the NFL obviously has some sort of ability, or else they wouldn't be starting. So I always hear that it's like, oh, he's got all the potential in the world and he's got all the tools. He can make every throw. I mean, Ben DiNucci can make every throw. He just has the little things that don't make him that good. It's kind of one of those things where I feel like as Giants fans, and I don't really know where everybody stands. I mean, we'll probably put up a poll on Instagram, but Daniel Jones, it's just like he shown you enough to say right now he's who you want in 2021, and even he's who you want kind of leading the franchise for the next 2, 3, 4 years. And it's really like I don't know. And I think, like you said, these next 8 games, not even if he kind of keeps doing what he's doing, or even if he does a little bit better and he's an average quarterback, I still think that Giants fans and even the organization might still opt to go to a quarterback if you see Justin Fields win a Heisman. I know obviously the consensus is, all right, if Trevor Lawrence is there, you take him. I get that. But I really feel like Justin Fields is going to kind of persuade certain fans and certain fan bases that, hey, even if we think we have our guy, we still might take a flyer on Justin Fields if he's there. I really think he's going to finish with the Heisman campaign.
Yeah, so Daniel Jones went 25 or 41, 256 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. A lot of those yards came because, you know, towards the end of the game, they needed those yards to come back. So it wasn't like a true 256 yards of passing. My problem with Daniel Jones is that he doesn't seem to learn. Like these interceptions seem to all be the same exact thing. Like
Hmm.
quarterbacks are going to throw interceptions in this league. That's the way football works in 2020. Every quarterback is going to throw interceptions. The difference is the difference is how are those interceptions? Are they just like good plays by the defense? Are they tipped? All of these interceptions seem to be on the exact same sort of play when the pocket collapses and Daniel Jones tries to play hero ball and doesn't
Hmm.
just throw the ball away. He tries to force it and then it gets picked. Like it's not like a good read by the defensive player. He's throwing them right to it.
Yeah.
So Daniel Jones needs to just throw the ball away. Uh,
Hmm.
at some like it's the same mistake over and over again. And I'm tired of the it's only his however many game in the
Yeah.
NFL. It's only his second season. At some point you have to learn from those mistakes and not do it again. And that's kind of the basis I put on a young quarterback, not just the wins and losses. And you're going to go through this eventually with Tua. It's not the
Yeah.
wins and losses right away. It's is he making the same exact mistake over and over and over and over again? And that's what Daniel
Hmm.
Jones is doing.
Yeah. And I texted another of my friends about his interceptions, and it's one thing to have you say you throw up a 50-50 ball and it's single coverage, and usually those result in either your guy pulling it down, the other guy deflecting it, or the very slim possibilities that the other guy it really intercepts it, because you really have to body that wide receiver and locate the ball. So that's a harder play. So an interception like that, like you saw Justin Herbert have one in the end zone. It was a 50-50 ball. It's one-on-one. You kind of just say, hey, whatever. You took a shot. Like I think you're really gonna. Anytime you see a one-on-one opportunity, you're gonna take that chance. And if it's picked, it is what it is. I mean,
Mhm.
Fitzpatrick has made a career off that. Jameis Winston has made a career off that. I know it might not be the best kind of example because two guys right now who are not starters, but they're still serviceable quarterbacks. And I think Daniel Jones, like it's such a weird thing because like his interceptions just seem to count for so much more, whether
Mhm.
they be drive killing, whether they be in the red zone like we've seen earlier in the season, or just kind of really stupid plays where you're trying to extend, like he's falling down, like just go to the ground. I mean, like we've watched Tom Brady do that. He would just hit the deck when the pocket would collapse, or just throw it at his wide receiver's feet, and we'd be like, oh my god, that stinks, that sucks. And that's why I think it's so weird, or not necessarily weird, but just like every analyst and guy in the media wants these young stud quarterbacks who can extend plays and stuff like that. But this is the byproduct of extending plays, that you try to be a hero. So again, I'd rather a guy just sit in the pocket, all right, it's not there, than just throw it away. Obviously, fourth down or something like that late in the fourth quarter, yeah, you're going to need to try to be a hero, but that's fine. But he's doing it in like the first, second quarter when you have a lot of game left or even a lead.
And it's cost the Giants games. Like, it cost
Mm-hmm.
them this game. The Buccaneers had 10 points off of turnovers. His turnovers killed them, in the Pittsburgh game in week 1. It killed them in the Cowboys game. It killed them in, all these games where they're not getting blown out. Other than the San Francisco game, the Giants aren't getting blown out. They're in all of these games. I think there's like 5 of their losses came down to Daniel Jones at the end of the game driving down to either try to tie or win. Like if they
Yeah,
lose
even
all
against the
2 or
Steelers.
3 of those games, all of a sudden you're in first place of the NFC East. And I tweeted this at you yesterday when we interacted on Twitter during the game. Like
Mm,
if the Giants had someone like a Ryan Fitzpatrick, they're in first place in the NFC East. Like there's no doubt
yeah.
in my mind, especially with how bad Carson Wentz has been and some James Addison kid at quarterback for the Cowboys, and who knows
Hmm.
in Washington what's going on there. Like if the
Yeah.
Giants had Ryan Fitzpatrick, they'd be in first. If the Giants even had Daniel Jones from last year, they'd be in first place. That's the problem with Daniel Jones, is that it's been mostly a step back this year than we saw in his rookie year. And that's even more frustrating when you see guys like Burrow or Herbert or all these other first year guys this year that are
Excelling.
playing better than
Yeah.
Daniel Jones is. So if you come to me like, oh, it's only his second year, give him some time, he needs to learn, blah, 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 blah. Well, I can just point at all these other first year and second year quarterbacks that are just outplaying him, like
Hmm.
a Mayfield or Mayfield's a third year, but like or a Herbert or
Tyler.
all these
Some.
guys,
Yeah.
Tyler, like all these guys are playing better than Daniel Jones is. So that's why I say, at the end of these 8 games, we got to really analyze where we are with Daniel Jones and make a organizational decision like how the Cardinals did with Josh Rosen and say,
Yeah.
hey, we might like Josh Rosen, but we like these other guys. We think the other guy's ceiling is so much better. And that's what you have with Lawrence and Justin Fields.
Yeah. And I want to ask you one more question on the offense, and I wanted to kind of get to the defense a little bit with the Giants. But offensively, do you think, I guess do you think Daniel Jones's success or failures are stemming from not having Saquon in there?
I don't think so because Saquon was out for a good chunk of the season last year too, and Daniel Jones did fine. And
Mhm.
the first two games where Saquon was in, he didn't run the ball particularly well.
Mm.
They had a pretty good running game last night.
Yeah,
Gallman
over
and
100 yards.
Morris had over 100 yards. We've seen a lot of good things from a Gallman and a Devontae Freeman who they brought in. We've seen some good things from their running game. I mean, it's not Saquon
Mhm.
Barkley in his rookie year or
Of
anything,
course.
but I don't think not having Saquon has hurt because I think a lot of these plays that Daniel Jones is making that are causing turnovers are that's his fault. I don't think it's because defenses are saying, "Hey, Daniel Jones, I dare you to beat me through the air." I
Mhm.
think that he's taking sacks and not holding onto the football when he takes a hit, or he's throwing it in ill-advised situations into tight windows, and I think that's why he's throwing these interceptions. I don't think it's because of Barkley.
Mhm.
Because if Barkley
Yeah,
was on the team, he'd still be throwing interceptions.
I think the same thing, and it just kind of goes back to our past conversations of like, what do you do with Saquon? Like with where this team's at, like, can you afford to dump that much money into him? And again, maybe I've been wrong a little bit because you see the success that Kamara has with the Saints, and then that obviously Dalvin Cook's having with the Vikings. But then again, the at least with the Vikings, you're a 1-2 win team right now. So it's like it's nice to pay these guys, and it's nice that they're doing well. But it's like if they're not going to win the games, it's like why are you going to pay them kind of that chunk of your salary cap? I guess you could say.
Well, like the last 4 years in the first round, the Giants have taken offense. We talked about this last week, I think. You
Mm-hmm.
go Ingram, Barkley, Jones, and Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
What has that gotten us? Ingram can't catch the ball. He had a pretty decent game, I believe. If I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken. 5 for
I
61.
mean,
Didn't drop
he's
anything.
got
But
an hour and a half until you might not be even on the
yeah.
Giants.
I mean, let's call it as it is. He blew the Eagle game all by himself.
100%.
And
100%.
he's had trouble catching the ball. He's had trouble with penalties. He hasn't been worth the first round pick, in my opinion.
Yeah,
That the
he
Giants
doesn't
made.
block
But
well either.
that wasn't Gettleman. That was Reese. That was the last
Yeah,
pick for Reese.
which that happens.
Barkley, I panned it from the beginning. I'm not going to take credit for it. I just wanted to say that I panned it from the beginning. We talked about it on and off. You don't take a running back second overall. You can get a running back that can give you 3/4 of the production Barkley can get for half the money and still
Mm-hmm.
get the first round pick somewhere else. So, and he's also always hurt now. This is back-to-back years where he's missed a lot of season. And then
Yeah.
Jones, we have no idea if he's the guy anymore because he can't keep the ball on the Giants. He throws it to the other team all the time. And then
Mm-hmm.
Thomas has been ranked one of the worst rookie offensive linemen in the game. So the last 4 offensive first round picks they've had in the last 4 years have been terrible.
Yeah.
So that's the
It's
problem with the offense. And that's a shame because the defense is playing so well. And if half of those offensive picks over the last 4 years were fine, then the Giants would have a much better offense. They'd win more games and they'd be in this division. But they're not.
and it's really interesting when you kind of think about the Giants, and it's just like it stems back to the Odell trade. And like I know you got Jabril Peppers, and like I think Jabril's doing awesome. Like he's a captain. Like I think he's doing really good at safety. But it's just like I just it to me doesn't make much sense because you talk to some Giants fans like, oh, like, I want to get Jamar Chase in the first round. It's like you just had that in Odell, but you wanted to get rid of him.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like that to me kind of didn't make much sense. But I wanted to flip to the defensive side of the ball real quick and say that first of all, the defense is doing awesome, like we said. However, you have Logan Ryan, who's on a 1 year, basically seems like a rental deal, and then you have Leonard Williams, who's been doing well, but again, another 1 year, and he's like $17 million deal. So it's like I feel like we can assume that they're going to lose one, if not both of those guys. So they're going to have some big shoes to fill next year as well, especially on that defensive front. So to me, I could kind of see them going in a route in the first round, maybe getting Gregory Rousseau out of Miami, kind of an edge guy, just because you're going to have a glaring need in the middle of that defensive line or on the back end at safety / cornerback with Logan Ryan.
Well, I think the saving grace for the Giants with Logan Ryan, if he walks, is that Xavier McKinney's been out the entire year. He was their second round draft pick out of Alabama, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Yeah. Kind of like the same kind of situation they had a couple years ago. Their second round pick a few years ago was Landon Collins, and he was pretty good for a few years. So
he was really good.
Logan Ryan walks, then you just slide in McKinney.
So that would be fine.
That would be fine. Hopefully, I mean, I've never seen him play a football game. Like I don't watch every single Alabama snap, so I'm not going to tell you based on YouTube videos if McKinney's going to be good in the NFL. That wouldn't be fair. But the Giants, even if they keep Williams, they still need a rush guy. So I think in free agency, when that opens up in March after the season, I think that's going to be their top priority if they don't address it in the draft. So I think in the offseason, I think if they don't take a quarterback in the draft, I think they'll go O-line in the first round. And I think I'm not familiar with their cap space going into the offseason right at the moment, but I think, pass rusher would be their top priority, because historically when the Giants are good and when the Giants win Super Bowls, they have that like premier, like intimidating, like guy, like the Lawrence Taylor, or Michael Strahan, or Justin Tuck, and Osi Umenyiora, a JPP, like all those guys. I think the Giants need that kind of alpha male on the defensive line. I think that's where they'll go through free agency, and then you'll just plug in McKinney for Ryan. I think
that's a great point about McKinney. And obviously, I've watched a good amount of Alabama games, and McKinney was a very highly sought after prospect. Obviously, he didn't fall into the first round, but still, he was kind of rated one of the better safeties in the draft. So I think McKinney's going to be awesome for them. That's a really good point. So yeah, you really can kind of afford to lose Logan Ryan in that sense. But I do think, they're going to really need some help on that D line. And it's awesome that you brought up how they need to do it in the draft and free agency, not just kind of one or the other. Because like we've talked about, investing versus addressing, why not just get a bunch of guys? Again, do whatever you can, especially when you have cheap labor in the draft. Get a couple guys, not just get one first round and then it's like, all right, we're good. But now I wanted to talk about basically the fact that the Giants, again, are still in the hunt. You have –
Don't do this to me.
I'm doing it to you. They have Washington, then they play the Eagles, and then they play the Bengals. And those are 3 winnable games.
If they won
two in their division games.
If they won one of the games against the Cowboys, the Eagles, or the Buccaneers yesterday, they'd be right in it, right?
I still think they're right in it. It is so disgusting how that NFC East is. You have a 1-17.
So I know the Eagles have a bye this week.
So I mean, you're going to jump up.
If they beat the football team, they'd be 2-7, right?
Yeah, and Washington would be 2-6.
And then the Cowboys, I don't know who they play this week. They'll probably lose it though.
Yeah, Andy Dalton's still not playing, so that's a guaranteed loss. I don't care who they're playing.
So that'd be 2-7 to 3-4-1. So what's that? That's a game and a half out. 2 games out.
Yeah, and then assuming then you're going to play the first place Eagles the next week to basically redeem yourself.
Yeah, and then you get the Bengals. So if everything breaks right, they could be, I don't know, I'm not going to do the math in my head right now, but by the end of week 12, they can be a half game out, maybe.
Yeah, it just they're going to get slammed.
Then you play the Seahawks, the Cardinals, the Browns, the Ravens, the Cowboys. The week 13 to week 16 is where it'll fall off the rails if they,
it's going to be again.
They're not going.
You're going to need to steal. No. Yeah, Seattle, that's a loss. But the Browns, Cardinals, you got to steal one of those. You're going to assume a loss to the Ravens, obviously, but the Browns and Cardinals, you got to steal one.
And then you might beat the Cowboys.
And that's what I mean. I think we talked about this the last episode or 2 weeks ago that week 17 against the Cowboys might be for them to get into the playoffs. And how insane would that be?
But we've been saying this for the last 3 episodes, if this happens for the Giants and this happens for the Giants and this happens, but it never does. The opposite happens where they're out. If they would have beat the Cowboys in a game they probably should have won. They scored 34 points, and then Dak was missing the entire second half. They still lost.
Mhm.
And then if Evan Ingram catches a pass against Philadelphia, and Daniel Jones holds on to the ball against the Buccaneers, all of a sudden this team, instead of 1-7, is 4-3.
And again, it just goes to show.
That goes to show that like this team is so young, and they're just not ready to win. Like if these losses happened this time next year, that would be completely unacceptable. I feel like everyone, everyone's frustrated with the Giants. Every Giants fan is frustrated the way this team's played, but kind of like on the other side, still understand that this is a brand new head coach and very young teams, and we weren't expecting them to win. Like next year, we should expect a little bit better than what we've seen because it'd be the second year of Joe Judge, and they should be able to win games next year. So if these losses happen next year, then there's a huge problem. But I feel like this year it's like whatever. Like it still sucks and it's still annoying, and I'm still gonna complain about it. But
I
think it's all about next year. I think when the Eli was on the Giants when he first started, he had those like 2 years, like 05 and 06, where he struggled a lot. They made the playoffs actually both of those years. They lost to the Panthers and the Eagles, and people were like, "Oh, is Eli the guy?" And then that third year, they won the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of where the Giants are. I mean, obviously they're not having those successes in those first 2 years like Eli did because he made the playoffs in those 2 years. But Eli also had a much better roster. But I think that's where we're looking at right now with the Giants. They're like that 1 or 2 years away. But it all can change if Daniel Jones never figures it out.
Well,
That's what this is going to ride on because everyone likes Joe Judge. Joe Judge seems like a guy that they like to play for.
He hasn't done anything to lose his job by any means.
Yeah, I mean, what's going to dictate the Giants' success next year and then over the course of the next decade is this offseason, is the decision they make on A, Daniel Jones, and the decision they make on B, Dave Gettleman. Because we talked about the draft. Do they, take a quarterback? Do they take a defensive lineman? Do they take someone in the secondary? And then in free agency, do they plug up that defensive line? Do you want Dave Gettleman making those decisions? Because what Dave Gettleman decision has worked out?
Yeah,
which Dave Gettleman decision, slam dunk. This is an absolute like home run decision by him. You can't say it was the Odell trade. I mean, a lot of people will be like, okay, Odell ran out his welcome with the Giants, but Odell, they feel the loss of Odell Beckham, right?
Yeah,
they don't have a number one receiver anymore. So you can say they got rid of this bad character guy, but also they got rid of this extremely gifted talent that helps you win games. So that kind of balances that out. Daniel Jones can't hold on to the football. Saquon Barkley always gets hurt. Evan Ingram can't catch the ball. Andrew Thomas hasn't been good.
I hated the Golden Tate signing. I thought that for the Giants seem to be going into like a youth movement and a little bit of rebuild, and that's awesome. That's fine. But like the Golden Tate signing, it didn't make much sense to me. So again, I'm surprised that I haven't gotten an alert yet.
And they made the Golden Tate signing, a year after they made the Brandon Marshall signing, which was a terrible failure.
Yeah.
So I don't think Dave Gettleman learns any of his lessons when things don't go well.
I mean,
they've been trying to replace Odell. They've been trying to replace Odell ever since they got rid of him.
Yeah. It's
and now
very similar.
Now people want them to draft that number one wide receiver. I mean, if you just held on to Odell and just kind of closed your eyes at the off the field antics and realized that this guy is like a premier talent.
Yeah.
Right.
Or just figured it out.
Like he's not a criminal. He's not a bad guy. I mean, Antonio Brown's a bad guy. Like there's a lot of baggage around Antonio Brown for many.
He's a potential criminal.
Odell Beckham punching a kicking net isn't exactly like a felony in my opinion that many Giants people believe that it was.
That's what I mean.
That's
a lot of
Odell trade.
Yeah, a lot of people were just running him out of town, and it's like I would have loved to seen Odell under a guy like Joe Judge, who seems to kind of keep his players in line. I mean, with the exception of Golden Tate and those antics, but you've seen Odell mature. That's no Giants fan, even if they hate Odell, because I know a good amount of them do. You cannot knock him for his maturity throughout the past years. He's definitely gotten more mature, and he's become a little bit more of a leader when he's been in Cleveland. Like with kind of Cleveland's wishy-washy type of seasons, like he easily could have been like, "Oh, I want to get out of here. I want to demand a trade. Baker sucks." But he's like, "Nah,
And
it's
there
my
was
quarterback."
rumors that he did that, but they squashed that.
But that's what I mean. Yeah, and he says, "Yeah, like I want to be here. I want to be in Cleveland. Like I want to win. Do whatever it takes to win." And it's just funny to see that. And everybody was just like, "Oh, that was such a great trade for us. Get rid of the diva and stuff like that." Well, it's like now you have Golden Tate, who caught the almost game time touchdown yesterday, and he screams in the microphone saying, like, "Throw me the ball," or "That's why you should throw me the ball," or something like that.
Mhm.
It's like that. It makes it kind of no sense. I just was not a fan of the Golden Tate signing, and just kind of everything they've done after getting rid of Odell.
Yeah, and
It's
if you
just
think
they've been
about
trying
it,
to replace him.
who was Odell's head coaches in New York? Like he had Tom Coughlin to start, and Tom Coughlin was older. He was out the door, right? So
Yeah.
it's hard for whatever how old Tom Coughlin was to like relate and like get to
Yeah.
like,
No, he
21-year-old.
100%.
He was 21, 22, 23 at the time. And then you
Yeah.
had McAdoo and Shermer, who were complete pushover people.
And both
So
got fired.
I think if you like put a Joe Judge in with a older, 27, 28-year-old Odell Beckham Jr., I think that's something that could have worked.
Yeah, and it's funny how, like, all right, you got rid of Odell because I guess he wasn't meshing with the team or the coaches, but then you also get rid of, like you said, McAdoo, Shermer. So it's like you basically took the L three times there, and and again, it's something that Giants fans, like, obviously it's different now because Odell's hurt, so it's like they don't really have to watch him kind of have that much success. But I think I definitely can foresee Odell going to a new team next year, and I really think he's bound to thrive and really have a really big comeback season because he's awesome. I mean,
Yeah.
he was electric with the Giants. I loved watching him play. Just like he's the type of guy who you hit him on a 5-yard slant, he could take it to the house, and not many guys can do that.
I think that if we want to make a prediction here on November 3rd on Election Day in America, I think week 1 next year, I think Odell's in Tampa.
Ooh.
Yeah. Because Tampa's getting Antonio Brown next week. Now I don't think Antonio Brown's going to be there for multiple years. And obviously if they're willing to get Antonio Brown and Brady and Antonio Brown together, I think you push Brown out the door at the end of the year, however it works in New England. And I think as Brady gets older, he's going to need that receiver like a Mike Evans on the other side that's going to help him out because Brady's not going to throw the ball down the field anymore as much as he used to. We see what happens with Drew Brees now that he's like 48 years old. So I think you get Odell. I think Odell said in the past he'd love to play with Brady. I think that's something that could happen.
While we're on that topic, I have two teams in mind.
Okay.
One is my Miami Dolphins. I think if they decide to not go with a wide receiver in the first round, you need that dynamic kind of number one type of guy like him who could play in the slot, which he does. So I think that would be very beneficial for both parties. And then my number 2 one, which I think is a little more realistic, I think he goes to Green Bay.
Okay.
I think that would be awesome because, again, and obviously the Packers have Devontae Adams, who's absolutely elite. But then you pair him up with a guy like Odell too, who's just kind of hungry for kind of his own redemption and comeback, and you put him with a guy like Rodgers. I think that would be awesome. I think that would be the perfect recipe for success for Odell's kind of comeback player of the year campaign next year.
Yeah, and the Packers need a wide receiver, and the trade deadline is like in an hour.
That's what I mean. And
obviously, Odell's not doing anything this year. He's out for the year, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be a big story in the offseason in the NFL is where Odell's going to go. Because he didn't pick Cleveland, obviously. Like, he was traded to Cleveland. So I wonder if he gets together with a elite quarterback, that would be a very dangerous thing for whatever division he winds up in.
Yeah, and I definitely like the idea of being with Brady too, because there was always rumors like, oh, Odell's going to go to the Patriots when Brady was there and stuff like that. But I think, again, it's crazy that, like, Brady at 42, going to be 43, whatever, is still going to get kind of guys to come want to play for him. Now, the only reason I wouldn't say Tampa Bay with Odell is just because there's no really kind of long-term or longevity there. Like, you figure Brady's giving you one more year after this, maybe another. It's like, at what point is he going to say, listen, I need to pack it in?
Yeah,
I
that's
know
fair.
he's still doing good, but it's like, it has to hit at some time. Like there's no way he's going to be 46 years old still playing. So unless Odell wants to, hey, maybe sign like a 1 year prove it deal, then maybe you could see something like that where say he signs a franchise tag and it gets traded and plays on it. Maybe then you could see with Tampa, and that wouldn't honestly be the worst thing because obviously coming off of an injury, who's really kind of going to want to kind of sign him longer term or really pay him a lot of money?
Yeah, he's still on that Giants deal that he signed that they immediately
Mhm.
traded him on. I'm not sure how long that goes, but star players have a tendency to dictate where they go.
Yeah.
And Odell didn't have that when he went to Cleveland. I don't think he'll stand for not doing that twice. So
Yeah.
we'll see what happens. But a team that you mentioned that was a possible Odell destination, also your favorite team, had a big momental game and moment in their franchise history with the debut of Tua. Now it wasn't great, which is nobody really expected him to light it up. I don't think against that defense and that defensive line, but he got that touchdown pass and the Dolphins won the game. So here we go. Here we go, Matt. The floor is yours. What were your initial thoughts on Tua?
So it's just so fitting how he comes out. First play was a handoff, whatever, but his first drop back to pass, strip sack by Aaron Donald, then gets picked up and thrown on his ass, and it was just like, all right, he's all right. He fumbled
He's alive.
He's alive. Aaron Donald clearly was a force in the game. You knew that was going to happen, and right off the bat, it affected him. And then what did he do after that? He didn't turn the ball over once. Again, he was 12 for 20.
A quarterback that doesn't turn the ball over.
And it's one of those things where we talk about game managers all the time, and obviously not saying Tua is a game manager, but just if you don't turn the ball over, your chance of winning has to increase by 70% or something ridiculous. And then so it was a very weird game with him because I mean they were up like 21-0 or 28-7, and then offensively they kind of just like the offensive coordinator Shane Gailey came out and said, he's like, yeah, well, we didn't really want to take any shots because it's like, why would you? Why are you going to risk throwing a pick? And everything was very kind of quick, whether it be a slant or it be kind of rollout to kind of just try to get him moving. And it was a good amount of runs and stuff like that. They didn't really have any success running the ball, which is going to be an issue. And then you sprinkle in, he had like 3 or 4 drop passes. So, I mean, out of only 22 attempts, I really went back and kind of watched like the game, and he had like 3 or 4 like bad passes where if he would have hit a guy, he maybe could have made something work. But again, you saw on the media, maybe this is something that I'm not used to, obviously, is seeing the Dolphins kind of in the media and the national light. But there was a lot of comments about him, and they were like, oh, like he did terrible. It was a disaster. They should move on from him. Like, I was like,
people said this already.
Skip Bayless was like, maybe the Dolphins should.
Come on.
Yeah.
Don't do that
So
to yourself.
just I was like,
I learned a long time ago to just not listen to what I blocked him on every social media. I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, and it was like the certain words that were used to describe his performance were very strange. It's like when I heard like disaster, and I was like I could think of a million other ways this could have went, and it had still not have been called a disaster. So that was kind of strange to me.
Game.
That's what I mean, and it's like you won the
Skip
football
Bayless
game.
Is a guy that was like, Tebow's like the next great thing when he would win games like being terrible. So
yeah, Rex Ryan, I've been listening to a lot, and he has a lot of good takes, and it's nice seeing it from a guy who was a coach, not just someone who was kind of an analyst. Like even the ex-players, they're not the same really as a coach, and that's what he said basically. He's like, he didn't tear it up, but like you won the game. He's like basically he's like, what more did you kind of want him to do? Like he obviously did enough to win you the game. He didn't do anything to lose you the game. Then you have to see obviously how he reacts going forward, because the offensive coordinator came out and said like we really didn't give him the whole playbook because of the situation, because of him, obviously because of Aaron Donald. I mean, we cannot sleep on the fact that the Rams defense is absolutely one of the elite defenses in the NFL. But now the fact that the Dolphins beat them, it's like, oh, well, now they're not that good. Kind of one of those things. It's like anyone we beat. Same thing with the 49ers. We demolished the 49ers, but it's like, they're not that good. But then the 49ers come out and kill the Rams, and then the Rams beat the Bears, and then all that stuff. But neither here nor there. But again, through week one, first of all, he survived. So that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
You really see the zip on his ball. And for some reason, he gets knocked for his arm strength, which I don't really understand why too much. Because when you watch him throw the ball, like he might not have a cannon like Justin Herbert, but he gets it there quick. And he throws it with anticipation, similar to kind of that Daniel Jones play for the 2-point conversion, where he's not just going to wait for the ball or wait for the play to develop. He's going to kind of throw a little bit before. But I mean, it was awesome just to kind of see him out there, and you really see like, all right, this is it now. Like this is like where his kind of tryout basically begins. I mean, again, and through 1 week, you're saying like that was fine. Like again, it wasn't good, it wasn't great, but it wasn't bad. Sometimes that's all you is. And if you win the game against a good Rams team, how can you not be happy?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm a Dolphins fan, I'm totally cool with what happened. I mean, I don't think anyone expected him to, walk out there against the Rams, as you said before, and just completely like put on a show. I don't think that was possible, and I also don't think that was fair to expect. So I think, you won the game, and you saw things from Tua that you saw at Alabama, and it's going to be a quick process, but at the same time, it's going to be a very slow process. I don't know if that if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I get what you mean.
Because he didn't have a preseason, right? This is his first real game action. The Jets game aside, that doesn't really count. He played 3 plays, but this is really his first game action since that game he got hurt against Alabama.
Yeah,
it was a whole year ago?
351 days ago was the last time he stepped foot on a football field.
Yeah, and we both know as athletes, like if you take a whole year off, like in baseball, if we take a year off,
I couldn't imagine.
You take a year off from swinging the bat, you go into the cage, you can't hit anything, and it's just the way it is. So he needs there's timing he needs to get back, both in the fact that he hasn't played in a year, and also this is a completely different roster that he played with the last time he played, new teammates and a new system and all that. So
it's a new league too. Like
everything's faster. Like if you ask like an NFL player what's the difference between college and the NFL, it's speed. Like everybody's faster. Those are grown men playing in the NFL.
You got baptized by Aaron Donald.
Yeah.
And that's
I wouldn't have any complaints if I was a Dolphins.
No,
you won the football game, and now what's your record, right? What's your record?
You're 4-3. We're 2 games back out of the AFC East and like 1 game back out of that wild card spot.
Yeah, so you have a chance, and the Bills almost lost to the Patriots. So the Bills over the last few weeks really haven't impressed everybody after that really hot start that they had. Josh Allen's kind of cooled down. Like we were in the first 4 weeks, we're like, is this guy an MVP candidate? That's kind of simmered down a little bit.
100%.
And who knows where this season? You got the Cardinals up next. The Cardinals are a good football team. They don't have the defense that the Rams do, though.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So
you got the Chargers who had a really bad loss, and then Broncos, Jets, Bengals, Chiefs. You're not going to beat the Chiefs. Patriots, Raiders, Bills. Like it's all in front of them.
Yeah, no. This next stretch of 5 games,
incremental improvement game by game from Tua, and you don't have that huge blow up. Even if you have like one blow up within the next 8 games. Like it's still out there for you to go on a run. And in an AFC where it's really not that impressive, you don't have New England anymore, and the Ravens aren't as good as they were last year, and Jackson didn't have a great game against Pittsburgh yesterday or Sunday. Like why not? Why can't Tua sneak in? And then even if Tua sneaks in, then you have the Texans picks that could be a top 5 pick. Like I think the Dolphins are in a very, very enviable spot from the rest of the NFL standpoint. I think that, from where they were last year, where people were saying they're going to go 0-16 for Tua, and then they end up getting Tua anyway, even though they didn't go 0-16, and then all of a sudden they could really catapult themselves to the top of the division by this point next year.
Yeah, I mean, you look at just like the team just a year ago they had the dead last defense in points let up. Now you fast forward to today, they're number 1. I cannot tell you the last time that the Dolphins ever had a number 1 defense in scoring. It's really awesome to kind of see what Flores and Chris Greer, the GM, and even the owner, because obviously it's his money, were able to do. Like when you talk about like buying into a system and buying into a coach and just everything he's preaching, this is the culmination of that. And I've really never seen anything like it in my days as a Dolphins fan. Just really They got the guys that they wanted, that fit their scheme. They went out in free agency. They spent big, and it's working out with guys like Byron Jones and Emmanuel Ogbo, who has like 6.5, 7 sacks. Last year, I think the leading sack guy had like 3. Like, we were disgustingly bad in sacks. And so you're seeing kind of the fruits of the labor of just kind of what they've been working towards. And obviously, through the first couple of weeks, it wasn't pretty when they lost to the Patriots and they lost to the Seahawks and lost to the Bills. But I mean, do I dare say this is an absolute scorching hot Miami Dolphins team? And I know people will say, oh, well, Fitzpatrick, if he was in, they'd give you a better chance. But like you alluded to before, you have a chance to give a rookie quarterback who, like we said, hasn't touched a football field in 351 days. You're giving him that 7 weeks to learn the system, to learn under Fitz. And now you put him into a situation where the defense is going to do well for him. So it's not like he's constantly having to come back from 21-point deficits, because that's too much to ask for. And you're not really going to even see the best version of a quarterback with that. That's just all desperation stats. So you have a guy like that who has a good defense, who's going to keep the game close, and you give him a chance to possibly make a playoff run. And then even more so, they might even expand the playoffs and make it 8 teams instead of 7 now. Mm-hmm. So like you said, at first I was like, sit him for the year, but I think this is a perfect situation for him. Like we said, he's medically cleared, so we don't have to worry about that. Injuries happen. If he gets hurt, shit happens. But this is a perfect opportunity for him to get his feet wet. And you got baptized by the Rams, and honestly, I loved it. I was nervous at first, but I was excited because, hey, no one cares if you can go ball out against the Jets. Nobody cares about that. But how are you going to do when you face one of the better defenses in the league? And through week 1, I mean, I thought that was a fair performance in your first game back to play the Rams and Aaron Donald. I thought that was a very good job by the whole coaching staff and by the defense kind of picking up the offense. I mean, again, it's a team sport. To go out there and expect your quarterback to do everything and do it all and score 7 touchdowns and also simultaneously play defense is impossible. So like you said about like kind of expectations and stuff like that, I think the national media and the non-Dolphins fans are expecting him to do what he did in college and even in the championship game where he came out and just threw 3 touchdowns and obviously won the game for them. This isn't college. This is the NFL, and I think you're definitely seeing that.
Yeah, he could obviously, develop into a guy that we saw at Alabama and do in the NFL. Like that, we're not putting that past him. But
yeah.
I think it's important to get these 8 games under your belt because week 1 next year, the Jets could have Lawrence, right? The Patriots can have Fields, and I think it's important for Tua in terms of the race for the AFC East crown next year to have that 8-game head start over those 2 guys specifically, and then really set his gears on defeating Josh Allen for that division. Because if they sat Tua for the rest of these 8 games and they just ran with Fitzpatrick, and then you put in Tua week 1, then he's essentially like a rookie, just like Lawrence would be, and whoever the Patriots going to take is going to be. So I think it's important for Tua to have that 8-game head start over Lawrence and whoever the Patriots have, because while those 2 guys next year are making the mistakes that he's making now, Tua is going to be making that next step towards a guy that can lead you to a division.
Yeah, and
they can still make the playoffs this year.
That's what I mean. That is an absolute great point, and I think it's like no one's expecting them to win the Super Bowl this year. That's not even in the kind of the realm of possibility. Like obviously you want it to happen. You're obviously going out there saying, hey, I want to win every game, but you understand there's going to be some growing pains. And like you said, I'd rather them happen in week 9, 10, or 11 of his rookie season than next year, and I think the defense doing as well as they have been was more of a reason to get him in. Like I said before, because you don't want to go in next year and then say your defense gets even better and they're borderline top 5 defense in the league, but your quarterback's still making kind of rookie growing pains similar to like Daniel Jones is. Then it's a very kind of shitty situation where the defense is constantly trying to carry the offense. Like right now, if the defense is carrying your rookie quarterback, I think that's somewhat acceptable. But then next year, they got to help each other out. And I think it's a really good plan. And you have to be excited for 2021 for how things have gone with the whole kind of organization that the Dolphins have right now. And you still have a shit ton of picks left.
And I think the organization as a whole I don't think care more, but they definitely have more motivation now that Tua is out there. Like he's
Yeah,
he's
no,
supposed to be the
it's
guy in the saver. No disrespect to Fitzpatrick or Tannehill or
yeah.
Matt Moore or
Hmm.
Chad Pennington, whoever the Dolphins have run out over the last decade plus at
Yeah.
quarterback. But this is the first time since I guess Marino, you know more than me, that the Dolphins like have like someone who they can say is this is a premier franchise quarterback. We hope.
Yeah.
And that lifts up the whole roster from the defense to the coaching staff to the front office. You can just feel watching a Dolphins game that the energy and the vibe is much different than years past.
I mean, 100%. I mean, I'll going back to last week to his debut. There, right when he got put into the game against, or 2 weeks ago because they had a bye last week, when he got put into the game against the Jets in the Miami kind of Broward County area. In the last 2 minutes of the game when he entered in, there was 32,000 more households that tuned into the game that weren't previously watching when he got in. So clearly there's a buzz about him. They
And
haven't
the
drafted a
players know
quarterback.
that. Then the players know
100%.
that.
100. They haven't Dolphins haven't drafted a quarterback within the top 6 picks since Bob Greasy in like 1970 whatever. Obviously he went on to be one of the in 72 when they went undefeated, but you like you said, you talk about how all the players, they know kind of what's at stake here, and they know like Tua is supposed to be the guy, obviously. And the center for them, Ted Karras, he talks about how, hey, like we need to be better not only for ourselves, but he says like we need to be better for Tua. Like we need to do a better job of getting him comfortable, basically. And it's such a cool thing to see, kind of the players acknowledging the situation, and they're acknowledging, hey, like here's this kid, because he is a kid. He's friggin' 22, and he's basically handed the keys to the city and saying, "Hey, here, go sink or swim." And you see the teammates kind of picking him up and saying, "Hey, like you're not going to have to do this alone." And I think that's what's really awesome to see. And not every rookie quarterback gets that opportunity. A lot of times it's hey, here it is, and then you have no help, and you have kind of no real good leadership. You have coaches that come in and out. You have new systems that you have to learn. And I really think that he's in one of the best situations with having a good coach, having a good defense, obviously, right now, too, and having a ton of guys around him that are nice veteran leaders. It's really cool to be a Dolphin fan, I think, right now. And that's something that I really haven't been able to say for some time.
Let's move on to we have time to talk about one more game here.
Mm-hmm.
I think Chargers Broncos would be it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Chargers had a 21-point lead in this one, and
Mm-hmm.
they blew it. So I give Denver credit for coming back, but we talk about Herbert a lot on this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
You weren't a fan of him going into the draft, and then you kind of were like, oh, he's not that bad. And then now, with that, collapse by the Chargers. I mean, the Chargers now 2-5. They win that game, they're 3-4, and then things are looking different for their season. Now the Broncos are sitting there at 3-4, and they're fighting for that last playoff spot. So the momentum swing and really the swing of the entire season for those two teams really changed on that game.
Yeah. It was again, I mean, the Chargers have blown like 3 16-point leads.
Yeah.
And there's a Chargers game around over my shoulder now, and people are even now starting to say, oh, Anthony Lynn kind of might get fired. And Anthony Lynn basically got asked that question, and he was asked like, oh, like, do you think like you're on the hot seat? And I really loved his answer. And he was like, anytime you're losing football games, he's like, hell yeah, like you bet like I'm probably on the hot seat. And I thought that was really cool to see that like he acknowledges the situation. Like he understands that I need to be better as a coach and I need to win these games or else I am going to be gone. Same thing with like Cam Newton. Like he says, if I keep playing how I am, I'm not going to be the starter, which is it's very kind of like a lot of other coaches would be like, oh, like I'm in no danger of this. Like I'm fine. Like I'm gonna keep doing everything
My
the
biggest
same.
pet
Like
peeve is when players and coaches are like, I don't pay attention to what the media says. Like, yes, you do.
bullshit. Yeah, it's your job, and they're talking about you. You 100% understand. So I think it's very weird with the Chargers because you're putting up 30 points. You should win the game. You absolutely should win the game. So I think it would be such a detriment to Herbert to bring in another coach, and then it's another new system, and then it's like maybe you don't get the same kind of marquee free agents if you have a new head coach in there because you don't really know what you're going to get. So their defense needs to figure it out. And I understand they don't have Derwin James this year, who's one of the top basically defensive players, but I don't think he's saving you from those 16-point losses. I think the whole defense needs to figure it out. And it's weird because you have a guy like Melvin Ingram, the linebacker, and you have Joey Bosa, obviously, who's one of the highest paid defensive players. But you're letting up 31 points, and you're letting up 31 points to the Broncos, who are not a good team by any means. They're pretty banged up from a wide receiver standpoint. And again, defensively, they're really nothing crazy. They don't have Von Miller either. So it's like they have a lot of figuring out to do, and they have to do it pretty quick.
This seems like an organizational pattern with the Chargers, whether it's San Diego or Los Angeles. They always seem to just blow it.
Yeah.
Like, this is something like it's a shame because they've had really good teams in the past. And I think Herbert is a good quarterback. And I think over the next few years, this is a team to look out for. But at some point, going back to the beginning of the podcast about the Giants, at some point, you got to finish. And I know it's more unfair to Herbert than it is to Jones because this is literally Herbert's first year. Yeah. But from an organizational standpoint, they always seem to have these collapses. Like they have a few every year, and that's cost them a lot of playoff games. That's cost them trips to Super Bowls.
Yeah, it's at the end of the day, you have to win. It's like those moral victories can only last you so long, and it's like, all right, it's awesome that you have. It looks like you have the guy in Herbert, but now it's like, all right, well, how are you blowing these games? Like you're killing yourselves as a franchise.
24-3, 6 minutes left in the third.
And it's like, listen, you do that to the Chiefs, that makes sense, but like not to the Broncos too. Like that, they're both AFC West teams, right?
Yeah,
like, you're doing that to a division rival. Like that's just again that could be. You lose one more bad game like that, again, Anthony Lynn might be gone.
Yeah, it's rough to see, but still one of those growing pains with the Chargers. So we'll see how that goes. I know I said that that was the last game we're covering. I want to cover one more thing. I want to cover the Steelers Ravens.
Yes.
I completely forgot about that when I was like going through the scores. So Pittsburgh wins 28-24. They improved to 7-0. They beat the Ravens. Specifically that last drive. I don't know if you saw the entire thing.
Yeah,
they didn't throw the ball. And a Pittsburgh defense that's great against the run. I know, Lamar Jackson running is different than any old running back running.
Yeah.
He's much more dynamic than that. But what were your thoughts on, Harbaugh's, kind of play calling, kind of his like coaching in that game? Because there's a couple ways to go about it. It's, it's the bad play call. You don't keep the defense honest. You don't put it in the air once when you need to. Or you can say, again, in a big game, Lamar, who is, otherworldly talented and one of the most dynamic players in the NFL, when it comes up in a big divisional game or a big playoff game or a big game in general, seems to fall flat. So which one do you think it's more? Do you think this is more on Lamar, or do you think this is more of a Harbaugh thing in this game?
I think Lamar kind of tipped Harbaugh's hand, like you said. Like it clearly looked like they didn't want him to throw the ball. Like he had 2 interceptions. He had pretty sure he had a fumble too. He had Lamar Jackson had 3 fumbles, 2 of them were lost, and he had 2 interceptions. So it's one of those things where they didn't want him to throw it, but then they obviously didn't want him for him to run the ball specifically too. And then again, I didn't love that last play call where he got stuffed right at the kind of near the goal line there. Like just to me in a do or die kind of situation. And I saw it obviously yesterday. It happens in every game, but the Giants, it was like 3rd, 4th and 1, whatever it was, and I think they stuffed the Buccaneers or they got stuffed, whatever it was. I hate that just kind of like, all right, we're going to try to just run up the middle. Like, I'd rather just give the ball in the quarterback's hands to pass, and then if you want to run, you can. So, again.
Why wouldn't you give the MVP that option?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, you just said, all right, you're running. That's what I mean. Like if you at least give the option, who knows, broken play, you could figure something out, even figure out a big play or a touchdown. But I didn't love that play. And, again, overall, like, Lamar's kind of stock is just obviously been dropping a little bit. And the Ravens have a pretty good defense where they're still going to keep them in games, but same thing like we've said all year. If you turn the ball over, you're not going to win games. It's literally as simple as that.
Yeah, and you didn't even need Lamar to like air it out, throw it downfield. make a one-on-one kind of play. A quick out or a slam, just to keep the defense honest. I feel like even if it felt incomplete, that play, the defense is on their toes saying, okay, Lamar can still throw it here. Even though he's had a tough game,
do what quarterbacks do.
He can still throw the ball. But, everybody in the world knew that Lamar was going to run that on that last play.
And they just stack the box.
When everybody watching on TV knows what's going to happen, then the defensive coordinator knows what's going to happen. And when the defensive coordinator knows what's going to happen, it's really tough to convert.
Yeah, no.
Especially a team like Pittsburgh.
Yeah, that's what I mean. You really expected Mike Tomlin to not kind of figure that out, and even an experienced and very good defense to not kind of sniff that out. How do you not at least do some sort of rub route or some sort of play action play something? I mean, again, we talked about this. I think it might have been on maybe the first or second episode about what's an interesting kind of stat to look at the overall outcome of a game, and I mentioned turnover differential. Pittsburgh had 1 turnover compared to Baltimore's 4. I mean, that's what I mean. Yesterday in the Giants game, what was it there? It had to be 2-1, maybe something like that, or
I think the Giants have one. The Giants forced a fumble that they got.
I think it was the only one, and it's simple as that. It's if you're turning the ball over 4 times in a game, that's 4 less opportunities where you could potentially at least put up 3, or at least eat some clock at least, and then stop the other team from scoring. So I mean, again, I think you're really going to see when we look at the end of the season, the teams with the least amount of turnovers, odds are they're going to be probably the best ones.
Very quickly before we wrap it up, Pittsburgh, can they unseat Kansas City?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, again, their defense is so good, and I think they could pressure Mahomes enough, and they have the corners and the safeties to kind of cover their the Tyreek Hills and the Travis Kelce's. I don't see why not. And I know the Chiefs are really good, obviously, and they're Super Bowl favorites clearly, but I mean, I really don't see why the Steelers couldn't kind of take them out a little bit. I mean, they're red hot right now. Mike Tomlin, again, tip my cap to him. He's awesome.
Every single year, he gets them ready to play. Doesn't matter.
And he's always, for some reason, on the hot seat. Whatever, people don't like him. I don't know why.
I'll take him.
But I would love a guy like Mike Tomlin leading my team. So I think the Steelers. I mean, let's take a quick look at their schedule coming up. They have, Cowboys. That's going to be a win. But Cowboys, Bengals, Jags, and they got Ravens again. I mean, they don't really have any more tough games after that.
Is 16-0 on the table for them? Where's their loss?
I don't see why. I really don't see. Maybe just the Ravens. That's the only one I can really think of. I don't see the Bills beating them. I don't see the Browns beating them. I don't even see the Colts beating them. That
would be the quietest. There's only been 2 other 16-0s.
Yeah.
But, that would be the quietest, amazing season ever.
Old ass Big Ben, yeah, and a Mike Tomlin who is consistently on the hot seat for whatever reason goes 16-0. I mean, again, it's one of those things that statistically probably won't happen, but when you just look at the schedule, who's beating them? I really don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it could be the Ravens. I mean, but they would have to go to Pittsburgh to do it because
it's gonna be Ravens or Colts are the best chances there. I think it'd be the Browns.
And when you go to the playoffs, if you look at the playoff in the AFC now, you got Bills, Steelers, Ravens, Titans, Colts, Chiefs. Nobody other than the Chiefs scare me if I'm Pittsburgh.
No, not at all. If they're going to have a home playoff game against
especially
whoever
since we don't know what Jackson is in the playoffs because his first 2 playoff games have been disasters.
That's what I mean. And the odds are it's going to be at Pittsburgh, so I would take the Steelers 10 out of 10 times.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And I need to apologize to Big Ben because going into the season, I was like, I don't know. The Pittsburgh has a good roster, but who's this quarterback? And Ben came back from a really bad injury. You can make the case that the injury that he had at his age, he could have easily just said, you know what?
Yeah,
it's been a ride. But now he came back. And, he's been very, very good.
Yeah, so, no, I'm all aboard the Steelers hype train right now.
Oh my God, the Steelers hype train. One of the few teams the Patriots are like this, and the Steelers I don't like them. I don't want them to win for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But I think Mike Tomlin is probably the coach of the year for what.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you there. I'll take that prediction any day.
So that will just about do it for this Week 8 recap. Week 9 is obviously going to be on Thursday, Sunday, and Monday, as it always is. Giants play the Washington football team. I did not say Redskins.
There you go.
Finally, the entire episode where I did not intentionally say Redskins. So good for
I'll
me.
put up for that.
Dolphins and the Cardinals. So we're going to come back and we're going to dissect those. Hopefully Tua takes another step towards another positive step. And I don't know what to expect from Daniel Jones anymore. I'm sure.
Hopefully Daniel Jones figures it out. I mean,
I don't know.
Is this an absolute must win right now for the Giants?
I think their season's over anyway, so I'm going to say no. But
right.
If they do lose to this Washington team with who they have under center, I don't even know who it is. Is it still Allen?
Kyle Allen. Yeah, I think it's Kyle Allen still.
They have the Redskins number. Like they handled the Redskins pretty well, even though the last 3 years they haven't handled anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
So if they don't win this game, I don't see them winning a game until maybe Dallas Week 17. So we'll see what happens. If you want Trevor Lawrence, you better hope they lose.
That's fair.
Because by the time you hit 2 losses with the way the Jets play, like it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So
I'm with you there.
So who knows? But that is for another episode, and then another episode will be next week. So in the meantime, for Matt Farrar, my name is Glen and Matt. Thank you for listening to another episode of Ice the Kicker presented by Caps on Sports, and we'll see you next week.